Hey guys, how are you guys doing? Pretty early kind of deadline stream today, so it's quite nice for me. Obviously, just finished work. Yeah, I think let's. I've actually turned off kind of DMs from Twitter because I think last live stream I was really struggling with the amount of requests. So, if you want to kind of drop a comment, feel free to do that on the YouTube channel. If you have already obviously spoken to me in the past on messages on Twitter, you'll still have access to that, so that's totally fine. Um, let's just actually start with some of the questions as well, though, to be honest, because I think this game week's a bit interesting. The short turnaround means that I think, given the fact that we haven't touched the fixture swing yet, most people probably have similar teams. It's just the issue with DCL and Antonio kind of coming in for players, and especially if you're someone like me who still has, for example, two West Ham assets. I guess some people were also thinking of maybe taking a hit to move away from someone like Ben Rama, right? Or even taking a hit to move away from Christensen if you think that he's not that strong. But for me personally, I do think Christensen is someone you can keep in your team. As for Ben Ram, I do think, I wouldn't really go for a -4 because I'm not expecting, Rafinha to have a devastating haul, for Newcastle. And of course, there's the issue with the kind of Rafinha issues as well. I actually think that seems to be more of a rumor. I think it's best to go off the fact that Harrison is out for sure, and hopefully Rafinha, for me, seems to be like a 50-50. I'm obviously not Bielsa, so I can't do anything about that. The only transfer I've made this week is DCL to Bamford, so you'll see that I have Antonio in my team as a substitute kind of bench option, and then Livramento will come in. So a very, very thin team that I have for this game week, but hopefully for the future game weeks, I'll be in a better position. And ultimately, I mean, I don't think I was really expecting, Antonio to have a fantastic game versus United, so I'm happy to keep him in my team, even if I lose a bit of value. KDB captain, do you think he'll start? I think that's. I mean, you're definitely going for differential here. I think Pep still mentioned that it's a bit of an easing in process with KDB, so I'm not really sure if he starts. I feel like he'll maybe play one more game as a substitute before he becomes a full starter again. So I think that would be the question. Mohammed says, is Trent worth a -4 hit? And for me, the only response I would say is that, who are you replacing Trent with? One, and then two, yeah, I mean, we can make a response based on that. I think someone also asked, would you bring in Ronaldo now on a wild card or just bring in Lukaku? And personally, I still think you can. I would probably go for Lukaku. I wouldn't expect many points from Lukaku, but the thing is, your team structure is going to have to be catered towards that game week 7 swing. So if you can get it to as close to that as possible, right, and maybe have a stronger kind of midfield and defense, then I think it's worth it. Excuse me. Should I bring in Torres or Rafinha? I think maybe Torres is interesting because of the Southampton game, and I'm really not sure about the Rafinha news. I agree that with Jacob, of course, you might not want to trust Pep. I mean, Torres has played a lot of minutes, and Foden is back. Sterling can also play in that kind of forward position at times. I'm doing well, Bunny. How are you doing? But once again, with the Rafinha issues, I really can't confirm. I mean, all I can say is that Bielsa didn't mention any issues yesterday, but if it's a fresh issue, then we can't really do anything about it. I don't have enough like intel in terms of leads. But hope everyone is doing well anyways, as we head into the weekend. Play Livramento or Brownhill to cover Antonio. Probably play Brownhill because Livramento could go almost negative in points. Khaled has the same team as me. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. That sounds good. Why do I say Harrison is out for sure? Because I think apparently Harrison has COVID. So that seems to be an almost confirmed rumor. What about Son? Will he start? I once again, I don't know in terms of Son because I think he's playing a later fixture, right? If you look at the fixtures, yeah, so Tottenham's playing Chelsea on Sunday, so we won't really get too much news about Tottenham and Chelsea players, to be quite honest, until then, which is basically the issue with when we look at Son. Let's see. What's my ideal wildcard team? I've made a video on my ideal wildcard team. So that was made on a 100 million budget. So you can actually look at that video itself. I've made two kind of suggested teams. I actually probably prefer the first team, if I'm to be completely honest. But that's how it works. Nuclear Atoms, hey man, thanks for the use of the spreadsheet. That helped me a lot. Subscribe after watching that. Awesome, thank you, Nuclear Atoms. Are you an avid FPL player yourself, or are you just kind of hopping in to see what's up? Worth taking a hit to get rid of Tony? I would probably say no, Jack, unless you're upgrading Tony to someone who's a bit more of a premium. Because, like, for example, I think at around Tony's range, right, we're only talking about Edouard, and I'm not expecting really Edouard to get a haul. If you're going down from Tony, I also think that there's no expectations there for anyone to get a good haul. If you're making a double trade, then I think it could be working in terms of, let's say, like strengthening a midfielder or something like that. If you can let me know what exactly you're taking a hit for, then maybe I can help you out with that. Would you bring in Rudiger, Cancelo, Diaz, Matip, or Wolves defender? You already have the Wolves keeper. I really like Cancelo, to be honest. I wouldn't bring in both Cancelo and Diaz. I think it's quite a lot of money. I do like Rudiger as well, personally. I do kind of need to see if Reese James gets played today as well, because I think that would color how I feel about the transfers in terms of Game Week 7 and onwards. The news on Rafinha, once again, I don't really have the news. I mean, it seems 50-50 up in the air. That's what I would say. No kind of official sources have confirmed or denied, whether Rafinha is okay, other than the fact that Bielsa said he was good to go, in the previous night. But things can change, if let's say he picked up a training injury, so I can't really confirm on that. Christensen to Semedo, because I think Christensen has to be moved away anyway in the future. I personally still think Christensen will probably start 2 out of 3 games. If that's an issue for you, then yeah, 100% go for Semedo. My personal assumption is that I think Christensen will play versus Tottenham because it's a much bigger game and much more is at stake. But I could be wrong once again, and he could play Thiago Silva. So if you're worried about that, then I can completely understand maybe moving away. Harrison, yeah, seemingly does have COVID, but that also is, once again, a rumor alongside the Rafinha injury news. I would probably stay away from Harrison, but I imagine most of you guys don't have Harrison anyways because of the Dan James threat. I wouldn't really take Christensen out for a hit this week though, guys, because I'm not, expecting some sort of extravagant haul from anyone else in terms of Wolves defenders. I know Semedo looked very, very inviting, when he was playing versus Watford, but ultimately, I think Watford is honestly one of the worst teams in the league right now, alongside Norwich, which is actually why I have Brandon Williams in my team, to be quite honest. I'm kind of hoping Watford will continue with their poor attacking form, and hopefully Norwich can kind of bag their first clean sheet of the season. However, of course, last season, I believe Watford did beat Norwich twice, 1-0. And this could be the one week where if you guys are holding Sar, Sar might kind of do well this week. I would probably go Sar or Gray this week. In terms of long-term potential, though, I do actually much like Gallagher and Gray, to be honest. Just because I think Gray right now, the interesting thing about Gray is not only the fact that he scored 3 goals in 3 games, but if you imagine that DCL is out, he will play a more talismanic role in the team, and the team will have to adjust to their lack of kind of available forward players. So I think Gray would definitely benefit in that situation. So that's pretty much how I feel about that. Bamford or Grealish as captain ahead of Salah for the extreme gamble this week. I mean, if you want to take a gamble, I think Bamford's quite reasonable. It seems like Newcastle is in quite a disarray of affairs. I think Grealish has played a lot of minutes as well. He might be tired from playing in his UCL debut, so I'd probably stay away from Grealish as a captaincy option, but I still think Grealish can do well. Reguilon, Benrahma to Semedo, Rafinha. I think that makes sense for a -4. Sar or Traore on a wild card. Honestly, I don't like either of those players on a wild card. I just don't think they've shown enough to be proven where they should sit on our teams. Traore just because he's unclinical in my opinion, and then Sar because I think his team is actually rather poor. Is Jota a great option? I can't actually see what you've mentioned, but for the captaincy, if that's what you're saying, my voice is echoing. Let me try and fix that. Is my voice echoing for everyone else, guys? Is Pogba good instead of Greenwood? I personally wouldn't do it, but I mean, Pogba, I can't deny the fact that Pogba has hauled pretty much every game. So yes, he of course is. Ala Madrid. Definitely, man. Okay, I've already responded, so you can definitely go for that -4 if you want. I think that's very reasonable. Bamford Gray over Tony Benrahma. Yeah, I like that. Marcel, Cancelo, and Rudiger, which two? I would still pick Cancel and Rudiger. Um, but I mean, I don't know if you have Trent in your team. So for me, the priority would still be to get Trent. Okay, it seems like my sound is fine. So apologies about the person who has echo. Maybe you're just playing two instances of the live stream. Thank you for the viewership, though. No echo here. Thanks, guys. Koke, I've already responded, so I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to time you out because we don't really want spam in the chat. Would you take a -4 to bring in Bamford? I probably would if you're in a similar situation to me, where you know, Bamford was kind of an option that I had to go for because DCL was obviously injured, and that was an issue. Jota triple captain. I would not triple captain a Liverpool player in this game week because I think Crystal Palace have defended quite well, to be quite honest. That's what I would be concerned about, guys, because Crystal Palace, I think, have posted very good defensive stats this season. We can have a look at the defensive stats together. And I think that will kind of color why I think they're quite a good team, to be honest. So let me just explain to you guys what this stat is. So the stat we're looking at right now, if I just kind of move my live stream to the right place, is we're basically looking at the league table, right? And you know, as you guys all know, you know roughly what expected goals is. If you don't really know what expected goals is, I think I will be making a video on kind of what to look at in terms of stats in the future and why expected goals is such an interesting stat. But obviously, expected goals allowed is almost the opposite statistic. It kind of tells you how good a team is at kind of reducing chances being built against them. And as you can see, Manchester City is actually lowest, which is quite expected because we expect City to be the best team. Chelsea, of course, is a team that we expect to be doing a little bit better in this area. But of course, I think the Aston Villa game was actually quite a good game from Villa. So if you're interested in Villa in the future as well, I would also like to mention that Watkins looked really good there. So I think Villa will be a team that will start to pick up form after they kind of hit that really bad fixture run and get out of it. But as you can see here, Brent, Crystal Palace, and Wolves are all doing very well in this chart. The only team that doesn't compare well in terms of how many goals they've kept out is probably West Ham. Even Crystal Palace, arguably, right? But that's due to the fact that Crystal Palace had to play Chelsea. And if you watch the game Crystal Palace versus Chelsea, you know, Chelsea scored some ridiculous goals. I think one free kick and one kind of crazy good long shot from Chalobah on his debut. Whereas West Ham have conceded some very weird goals. If you remember the kind of goals versus Crystal Palace, those are exactly the ones that I'm talking about. But yeah, in terms of defensive statistics, Crystal Palace has done tremendously well. Whereas, you know, some of the other teams that we suspect to be very poor, you know, Leeds, Norwich, Arsenal in the first few games, especially after they went down to 10 men, Burnley being one of them. And yeah, I think those are what we consider to be one of the worst defensive teams. I mean, Leicester as well is in around there, but I would also say, you know, part of it too is because we've only played 4 games. It really matters who you've played. Brentford, for example, haven't played a big team yet. And I apologize to any Arsenal fans out there, but that's just, you know, we have unfortunately gone past a period where Arsenal is a big team in terms of their starting 11. Obviously, they're one of the biggest commercial clubs in the world, and they have and they might return back to being a big team, but that's how things are. But that's pretty much why I think, you know, we need to look at Crystal Palace as a serious option. I wouldn't say the defenders are anything interesting, but that tells you why so many people have, for example, gone into, you know, Wolves defenders, Brentford defenders as examples. And obviously, sometimes you have to kind of also use your eye test and well and tell yourself, you know, whether a team is actually good defensively, because we know that even the West Ham and Man United have on paper a good defense. You know, they've let in slip basically a lot of very poor goals, whereas Chelsea, for example, have overperformed. Christensen out for a hit, I probably wouldn't do that. Who's the best triple captain options? I mean, I wouldn't triple captain this week is all I'm gonna say. But out of your list, I mean, I'd probably say Bamford if you have to go for that. I think news in the Newcastle camp are that there's a lot of disarray and disgruntlement with the manager, and the overall kind of supporter atmosphere is very low. So if you absolutely must triple captain, I think Bamford could be a crazy good shout. I still wouldn't go for that. What site am I using? I'm using a site called FBref. It's a site that kind of looks at statistics in football, and I think it's very helpful, to be honest, as a fan and someone who's actually trying to understand the numbers a little bit better. Bench Reguilon and start Williams. I think that makes sense, Bunny. That makes sense. How about between Marcel, Cancelo, White, Rudiger? Which 3? If you're just talking about playing for this week, I'd probably play Cancelo, and I'd probably play either White or Marcel for this week. I honestly, you've got a very, very strong defense. I would probably go for a back four this week, Zachary. I really wonder who else you have in your team. Kovacic pick for a wild card. I probably wouldn't go for Kovacic for a wild card. I mean, he still plays, pretty much as a center mid, so it does take like a monumentous game for him to do well. Not every week is going to be that Aston Villa game for him. He just doesn't get enough chances in terms of being in aggressive positions. Let's see if anyone's kind of messaged on Twitter. So, all right. Hospital's message. Shall I play Reguilon versus Chelsea or Alan v Villa? I'd probably go for Alan. I don't think either are, exciting options, but I do think Chelsea could really score 1 or 2 goals at the very least. I don't really expect Reguilon to haul versus Chelsea. I know Tottenham are playing at home, but I'm not too impressed. So Samarth has given us a team. Yep, looks like a very strong team, to be honest. No real issues. First player I've seen who's gone for Tomiyasu over Ben White. Let's see who's on the bench. Omubamidele, interesting. McAllister, okay. How much is McAllister? I don't think he's 4.5 mil, is he? So that's a bit of a weird one. I would say maybe you could spend your money a bit wiser or even just save it in the bank. I'm not really sure why you'd want to have McAllister in your team. Shen Jianwei has sent his team in. Shall I bank a transfer at 6? Prioritize getting Jota out during Game Week 7. And a Chelsea player in compared to the 2 Chelsea guys in at Game Week 7. Yeah, I think you can back a transfer at 6 because I'm just trying to think about Game Week 6, how your team would be affected. But Antonio would be back, so that's fine. And you could play the same team, to be honest, with no real issues. So I think that's all good there. Once again, a Tomiyasu pick, interesting. How do you guys feel about Pepe and Aubameyang? Is anyone going for those sorts of players this week? I like the team though in general. Is it a wild card? No, if this is a wild card, I'd say maybe you'd want to switch off a Greenwood. I know you want to cover Man United because you don't have Ronaldo, but potentially I think maybe you could still hold the transfer given the fact that you already have 2 Chelsea players. I guess that's fine, and you have a strong defense as well. I'd also make sure that you put Cody as your first substitution option as well. Wardon's team, let's have a look. If not, I suggest changes. I probably would wildcard this team, to be quite honest. I would wildcard for sure. I would 100% wildcard. Thoughts on that team for this game week? Cheers. Yeah, I think this team looks very good, to be honest. I know a lot of us have to play Williams this week, but if there's ever a week to play Williams, it's probably this one. Sell Benrahma for a hit for Sarr, or just wait and see which budget mid Traore, Trincao, Gray, Doucouré performs and take a more informed decision next week. Yeah, I agree with that because personally I'm holding off the Benrahma transfer so that I can actually move on to someone like Conor Gallagher or Gray. And for me the priority would be on those 2 players in my opinion. I'm not really a huge fan of Trincao or Traore, but they could hold this week finally. But ultimately we're talking about players who haven't held in 4 weeks. Being worthwhile. I don't think they really are. Do you think Bernardo is worth it, or shall I stick with Ferran? Do you mean Bernardo Silva? I think you should stick with the team you have. I mean, Spurs still have a defense. They get to play Emerson, and the internationals are back. So I would still probably stick the captaincy on Salah. In terms of Gray versus Gallagher, I'd say for this week, I'm more of a fan of Gray. But if you have the chance to put Gallagher on your bench, I would do it. I would still maybe prioritize Gray over him. The Saka punt continues. All right, good luck with that. I still think Pepe and Aubameyang are more interesting in terms of FPL assets. I like Saka a lot as a player, but the role he plays for Arsenal is almost like he's a ball carrier at times, and he plays in a somewhat less, I think, direct manner than he is able to when he plays with the English national team. I'm just going to go back to some of the YouTube questions for a bit so I kind of stay on track with that as well. Why Mendy? Mendy was just someone I picked for cash considerations because he's 4.4 mil as opposed to 4.5 mil. What do I think of the wildcard team of Ramsdale, James, Marcel, Trent, Salah, Torres, Sarr, Gray, Ronaldo? I think that's a very strong team you have, FPL Dream. My only issue is that I don't have the confidence to 100% say that Ramsdale is going to start every game. So that's the only thing I'd be worried with. Donald is at rank 55k. Awesome, well done. I think Tsimikas will start. I do think Tsimikas could start because Klopp has mentioned the fact that, you know, they're in a very tough fixture schedule and that he might need to rotate. I don't have a wildcard team right now. I'm just looking at some Twitter teams. The team that I have in front of me is just my regular game week team. I wildcarded last week. If you actually want to look at a wildcard template for this coming week, you can actually refer to my latest YouTube video. The video is about initial draft templates. Do you back the history or the stats? A bit of both, to be honest, because, I mean, stats are usually built up on a history of what a player has done, right? But some of it, too, is the eye test. So, and maybe if you're kind of referring to a player like Jimenez, who obviously had, you know, a history of goal scoring 2 years ago, and you're saying that maybe his stats don't really align to the fact that he used to be a good goal scorer, then maybe that's a good question that you have, right? I think it's always a balance, right? Sometimes it's a case where, for example, if you look at Marcel, he was crossing almost every week, you know, dropping, you know, maybe like 5-10 crosses, which is an absurd amount for a player not named Trent. And for that reason, I think, you know, when you look at that as a basis for whether someone could be interesting at FPL asset, and keep in mind, FPL actually really benefits, you know, players who aren't necessarily always reflected by XG and XA. For example, FPL assists. You can get an assist from shooting a goal on target. Think about the Ronaldo goal last week, right? Greenwood shot at the keeper. It was a pretty average shot at the keeper. And why does it turn into the assist? Because the keeper parries it and Ronaldo gets the goal. So if you look at someone who's kind of spamming crosses last season, Wan-Bissaka is very poor at actually, you know, timing his crosses. But ultimately, because he sends in so many crosses per game, he kind of gets those FPL assists through luck and by chance. And for me, that's why I thought Marcel was a good option, you know, heading into last week. And that's pretty much sometimes how I see analysis. It doesn't necessarily mean, you know, you have to always look at XG or XA. Some of the stats are really important too, such as shots on target, and also such as crosses, to be honest. You're in a situation where you have to take -8 to get in Bamford while having Antonio in your squad. What is your advice on this? You have to take a -8 to get in Bamford while keeping Antonio. I would like to know what your squad is, to be honest, because that does matter. In terms of what website I've been using so far for stats, it's FBref. Some people also use Understat. I wouldn't take Kristen out for a hit. Should we pick only Jewish players? I'm not sure if you're trying to make a joke or something, but I don't see a reason why you would pick players based on religion, to be honest. You should be picking them for what they provide on the football pitch. What's your Twitter? My Twitter is Total Tactics FB, but I do have DMs off right now. So if you just leave your questions, I'll try to respond. I'll also respond to some super chats as well and things like that. But yeah, also let's try not keep it political in the chat, guys. I mean, the community here, at least on my channel, is open to everyone. So, I mean, I won't take racism lightly here. So what do you think about defenders from City now that Laporte is out for a couple of weeks? I do think that overall that's a bit of a concern, right? Because we are losing a key centre-back piece. You know, I would have much more faith in City if Stones or Laporte were playing. So that's my personal opinion. I think Ake is obviously at a very cheap price, and Ake seems to be that kind of replacement, right? But I think I would probably still back, you know, a City player such as Cancelo at this moment in time, but only after game week 7 probably. Christensen out for a hit. I have no bench to cover, only have Livramento. You're in the same situation as me, Labil. So I personally am keeping Christensen. I'm not taking him out. I mean, when you take a hit for Christensen, you know, the player you bring in has to have a clean sheet or an even better return, and I can't justify that. When is the best time to triple captain? There's a double game week, you know, coming up in the season. Try not to spam the chat too much, please. Everyone has a chance to get their questions in. Need help with my team desperately. Team ID 7220. I don't have the time right now to look for specific team IDs. 7220. You must be a super old player, right? All right, fine. I'll actually have a look at your team. Let's have a look at it. 7220. Man, you must be playing FPL for a long time. That's crazy. If this is your team, I wonder if the whole chat can see it. Let me actually change it, the direction. All right, so this is the guy's team. I mean, White's good, Jota's good, Rafinha's good, Fernandez is fine. I guess the only issue is, what to do with Antonio now that he's on. I mean, I would probably wildcard here, to be quite honest, because I think with Antonio out, your team is very weak, and maybe this is a good chance for you to get out of Benrahma, right? So I would probably wildcard in this position, excuse me. You could obviously still play Ailing instead of Antonio, and then play kind of a 4-5-1. I still think that could work too, but obviously your points this week aren't going to be fantastic. That's just my personal opinion. I mean, you can do whatever you want, really. I still think you can live with Ailing, but it's going to be a poor haul. You could still wildcard and set yourself up. For example, even if you go Ronaldo now or you go Lukaku, you will still be in a good position to go to Game Week 7 as long as you have a Chelsea defender. But let's just go back to the YouTube comments for a bit. Amarty out for Duffy. Yeah, I think that makes sense if you absolutely have to. Reese James or Rudiger. Thank you so much, Dan Kelly, as well, for the super chat. I would definitely go for... I think it depends on who you have in your team. So some teams, right, have a 3-back right now. A 3-back formation where, let's say, someone like Marcel is on the bench. If someone like Marcel is on your bench, or you have someone like White on your bench, and you have confidence in your bench, then I would go for Reese James. But if you're looking for someone who's clearly set and forget, I think Rudiger is a little bit higher in terms of priority for Tuchel. He will, of course, get less expected points per game just due to the fact that he's a centre-back as opposed to someone like Reece James who can get, continuous assists. So I think that's the kind of juxtaposing thing. I think you have to look at your bench and kind of make that decision on your own. So, as I say, if you have a weak bench, go for Rudiger. If you have a strong bench, go for Reece James. Opinions on Bamford captain. I think Bamford captain can be a good differential this week, but I think one of the worries as well is that it seems like Harrison or Rafinha might be out of the game. I'm not 100% sure of that. I don't have the news. I don't have any news from official sources, but that would be a slight worry. I also think obviously the Salah captain is the safest option, but as I mentioned as well, Crystal Palace is a pretty good defense. You can remove only one of Christensen, Tony, and Benrahma, so I'm not blocked of triple Chelsea in 7. Which 2 of these will you keep till Game Week 8? I would probably actually take Benrahma out for now, because I think Vlasic is kind of rotating in with Benrahma in the future, and that will kind of hurt. Henry, thank you so much for the super chat as well. Wildcard thoughts, please. So you've got Mendy. Okay, that's probably Chelsea Mendy, Cancelo, Marcel, Trent, Rudiger, Gray, Jota, Salah, Rafinha, Ronaldo, Bamford. Bench, Foster, Manquillo, Scarlett, Mendy. I wonder if you actually have the chance to get a better... I don't think Manquillo is going to be playing every single game. I think maybe Livramento might be a slightly better option. In terms of going for a Chelsea keeper, I would probably not go for a Chelsea keeper. Not right now. I still think, going for a 4.5 keeper is the safest way to play FPL, because that gives you the flexibility to kind of improve other aspects of your team. So, for example, when I look at your team, I think Gray is a fantastic option, that you have as a flexible bench piece. And someone who can also play from time to time. But I would probably kind of save that money so you can improve on what would be, allowing you to play maybe a 3-4-3 formation. Because right now we have Gray, Jota, Salah, Rafinha. Those are 4 mids. And then we have 2 kind of starting strikers, right? I think the issue with having, Mendy, the Chelsea keeper, is that money could probably be put into, let's say, getting someone who's a bit more of a flexible bench piece. So someone like Gallagher, because I think right now your bench is very, very, very thin. That is kind of my concern, because I think Manquillo doesn't start all the Newcastle games. The Mendy that you've picked in terms of your midfield is a 4.4 option, and then Scarlett definitely doesn't play, right? So either I think you go for a better kind of 5th midfielder and kind of downgrade your keeper, so maybe going for someone like Gallagher as well. That would probably be a better way to spend the money in terms of keepers, because you usually don't want to spend money kind of transferring out your keeper or spend a kind of free transfer as well. So that's kind of how I feel about that. The rest of the team, though, looks very, very solid. And I imagine you'll have... And also, when you think about it, you'll also have excess money, right, coming in from Lukaku. So you could also, once again, spend that money to further improve your team at that point in time. But you don't want to be kind of picking money from your keeper and picking money from Ronaldo. Rafinha or Sarr? I think for this week I would go for Rafinha. I just think Sarr is less of a consistent option just because I think Watford is a worse team. Jimenez, Sarr, or Gray? I think I would probably go for Gray at this point in time. I think Gray is so nice because he is very cheap in terms of price and you can move away from him. He also gives you flexibility to move into different sorts of formations. And also with DCL being out, I think Gray really benefits, right? Because if you subscribe to the talisman theory, then DCL being out obviously tremendously helps the team. Will Jesus and Rafinha start and giving cap TAA? I think Trent Alexander-Arnold is a very interesting captain. I wouldn't say he's the right choice, but I think he's a good choice. I can't confirm Jesus and Rafinha starting though, because unfortunately, I just don't have the kind of insight in terms of the Leeds camp. I think Jesus will start based on the fact that Mahrez was playing in the UCL though, in the Champions League. No, thank you, Henry. Honestly, thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciate it. I'll have a look at some Twitter comments in a bit. I have no Sun updates right now, but I feel like ultimately you're probably not going to have a lot of hope for Sun versus Chelsea, right? Thoughts on Frankie Chan? I think the issue with Chan is that right now he's a super sub. So when you look at the formation, it seems like Traore gets subbed off for him. So my question would be, whether it's actually worthwhile looking at someone like, Frankie Chan, especially when he's probably only going to be playing 10 to 20 minutes a game. Also, if you guys could really drop a like and maybe drop a subscription if this is your first time on the channel, that'd be really, really appreciated. Richarlison, I don't think is a super interesting piece. I know he does benefit from exactly what I was saying in terms of talisman theory, but I just think there are better options at that kind of 7.5, 7.6 range. Players who are playing, for example, for Liverpool or Man United or even Man City, to be honest. Corey, thank you so much for the super chat. What Chelsea players should I target? I'm looking to set up for a wild card in game week 6 to 7. Sanchez, Trent, Ayling, Livramento, Duffy, Salah, Jota, Torres, Gray, Bamford, Ronaldo, Foster, Gallagher, Edouard. Ooh, interesting. So you're going for a double Palace. I guess if what you suggested is your kind of theoretical wild card, I would probably say I think I would go for Reese James, because in that structure you have enough players who can play off of the bench. I would probably go for Ben White over Ayling, in my personal opinion. Otherwise, I think the rest of your team actually looks very, very solid, and I do like it. So nice team there. And also, I do like the fact that you're also going for Edouard, but maybe two Palace players could be pushing it. Maybe you can watch Palace this week and reassess whether or not you'd like to keep them for the long term. But thank you so much for the super chat as well. And I hope that helped. Is Rafinha injured? Once again, I can't confirm, guys. I don't really have any news in terms of the chat. Omo Bamidele instead of Brownhill. I think that makes sense, guys. I think, if there's 1 week and you have, let's say, a Norwich player right now in your team as a bench option, then this is probably the week where you want to go for it. I think I'm personally playing Williams right now, as you can see my team. Let me drag it actually in the right direction so you guys can have a look. I'm also going to respond to some Twitter comments right now. So Martin Velez has shown us his team. So you're taking for a hit. You're taking Fernandez and Diesel out. Bamford and Salah in. 100%, I think you should do that. Probably not. I don't think you should go for Bernardo Silva. This is Sam G's team. This is my team. The end. Jody, Jota plus Cody for Tsimikas plus Ben Rama, or Jota. Sorry. Ironically, I do think Tsimikas could play, but I think Cody will be a kind of big addition to your team. I wonder if you have money in the bank to maybe get someone like Marcel, but if you don't, I completely understand. I also think, right now, your team is super defense heavy. So I think that, I don't know if you actually want to have so many deep defenders in your team. Usually a lot of people are going to be playing with Livramento, with Williams this season. And if you're too deep in your defense, that probably means that you'll struggle to get some of the more interesting kind of midfield and attacking aspects. Prospects rather. But I do recognize the fact that with some of the big injuries and red cards we have in terms of the striker position, I guess strikers are less desirable. But I think ultimately you still want to be moving in a direction when your Antonio comes back to probably have a slightly weaker defense, because you can get away with Livramento and some other starters, and then maybe kind of improve or change things around with your defense. I think, if anything, with Tsimikas, it's tough, but you probably want to keep him for a bit. He could maybe really play this week. I would probably focus on maybe getting Jota in through different means, whether it's, maybe downgrading someone like Soufal, who's probably set for a bad week, or something like that, just because of the fact that, you don't really want to have that much money in your defense. If you compare, your team to some other players right now, you're losing maybe 1 to 2 mil worth of value, especially even some of the teams where, let's say, some of the strongest defenses I think that will come after game week 7 is going to include someone like Cancelo, is going to include someone like Diaz as well, or Rudiger. And right now in this structure, you probably don't have enough money to kind of have that team. A lot of people are going to finance that by having a cheap 4.0 defender in their team, either one or two of them, with Duffy, as you can see. Brainless, wild card good overall. I think that's a strong wild card. I'm not really sure about Mane though. I have to say, I think that's it is a bit ambitious. But to be fair, you actually still managed to have a very strong team around it. So that's literally the benefit, I think, of having someone like Gallagher in your team. The bench is a little bit weak, but I think we can live with it. Maybe you can actually improve on the midfielder. I think Brownhill is almost like a yellow card magnet right now. So maybe Sissoko is a little bit more interesting. Other than that, I actually think your wildcard is very interesting. And one of the first 3 million drafts that I actually really like, Adam's teams. This for a wildcard or save till game week 7. I do need to kind of see your team before you've wildcarded, Adam. So if you can show me that before. But I really do like the actual wildcard itself, though. And I like the fact that you've played around with St. Max. Keegan. Hey, Fran. Plan is to transfer Greenwood to Rafinha. Who would you play between Williams/Alan for Antonio benching? I would probably play Williams. Considering a Bamford captaincy, I mean, I wouldn't say it's too clever. I mean, Newcastle honestly seems like a great fixture to target, so I wouldn't say it's too clever. That guy with a very discolorized image, I like it, saturated. Yeah, I like this team. The Saka punt continues, very, very nice. All right, let's look at Hafiz's team. Salah captain, nice. So Sissoko comes in for you. Okay, that's fair enough. Yeah, I think this is a good team. You're seeing more people in your mini league bring in 3 premiums. Should you be worried? I don't think so, right? Because we are going to head into a period where Ronaldo will have some tougher games, and you know, I don't necessarily need to get into the argument of whether or not Ronaldo's fixture proof, but I think the simple fact is, you know, you have a very, very, very kind of well balanced team, and that will pay benefits, right? It's not like Lukaku and Ronaldo are going to get braces every week. Shall you play it safe and get a Rudiger? You have Livermento and Ailing on your bench. Worth me getting Reese James. I think so. For me, what I would say is that I think you can still fit Reese James in your team, just due to the fact that you actually have some good bench defenders. The issue, of course, is this the right week because Livermento is going to fill in? That's another question. I still think I think you can fit Reece James in your team. I think you have a strong enough bench to kind of support it, and you know, as we go forwards, then it'll make sense. Let's have a look at Monsieur's team. How is this wildcard team? Very, very solid. Once again, I'm not a big fan of Dennis. I think that's the only kind of criticism I would have of this team. If you want to take the risk on Ramsdale starting for the rest of the season, that's fine. But I think there could be a case where Leno returns. That's my personal opinion, but maybe I'm wrong. Or at least I'd rather kind of want to wait and see whether, you know, Ramsdale gets a run of 2 to 3 games before I move away. Other than that, I think the rest of the team is pretty strong. Other than the fact that you have Dennis, I would actually, honestly, probably rather you saving that money or spending it elsewhere. To be honest. Let's look at Big Boy Adama's team, and then we'll go back to the YouTube comments in a second. You've got enough money to bring back Antonio if necessary. Is that good moving forward? I think this is a very strong team. Whether or not you'd actually like to take Antonio out of the team is separate. I personally wouldn't have taken Antonio out of your team, but I do like the team in general. I think this is one of the weeks where you probably have to kind of assess whether Sarr still belongs in your team, and you might want to move away from him if possible. But that's really all I would say. Let's go back to the YouTube comments though. Is Rafinha starting? Is that what's been confirmed, guys? Gallagher, Doucouré, or Townsend? I would probably go for Gallagher. But I don't expect Gallagher to have a good week versus Liverpool. But that's pretty much how I see the situation. Worth risking starting Tsimikas over Benrahma? I mean, it's not a risk, right? Because if you start Tsimikas and he doesn't play, then Benrahma will just come in. So I don't think there's a risk there. Greenwood or Torres? I think Torres is a little bit more interesting because I think, you know, Greenwood will run into tough fixtures. Marcus Rashford is apparently progressing very well with his injury. So that's going to be interesting. Can I do an Instagram Q&A? Not right now, but I could think about having an Instagram Q&A in the future. It's just, I think I prefer having the Q&As on the YouTube platform because we've kind of established ourselves here and we have a bigger following. Rafinha is starting confirmed. Oh, great. Let's have a look at the Rafinha news. Can someone send me the Rafinha source? Football Intelligence Unit. Is this guy meant to be like some sort of scout? Okay, fair enough. I mean, if Rafinha is playing, that's good news for a lot of people here. Ings to Bamford for -4. I think it could be worthwhile. What is a double game week in FPL? A double game week is a week where, because of cup fixtures, sometimes some teams will play twice in the same game week. So it really has to do with how fixtures change and how the cup fixtures kind of change things. We also have something called a blank game week, which is where not all 10 teams play in that week. Some teams might not actually play in that week. Pogba's a good choice. It's hard to say, but I think, yeah, I think Pogba is starting to be a good choice, even though I didn't really expect it this season. Is he a fantastic choice? I would probably still say no, but he is a good choice, yes. Thoughts on Tomiyasu? I think Tomiyasu is interesting. I don't think he has necessarily a lot of potential in terms of getting more points than someone like Tierney, right? I still think the focal point in terms of defensive kind of creative contribution is Tierney. And I feel like for that reason, you probably are better off going for White at 4.4. But, Tomiyasu also has slightly more competition as well, in my opinion. But I think he will be starting for most of the season. So if you want to have Tomiyasu, and maybe you think he's a little bit of a good option between White and Tierney, then fair enough. Go ahead. Bruno out for Rafinha plus Bamford, or Sarr plus Bamford, or Gray plus Bamford. I kind of like Gray plus Bamford a little bit more. I know this is a good week for Sarr, but I think overall I think Gray's a better option. Why Salah over Ronaldo as captain? I just think it's just a case of Liverpool playing at home, and West Ham haven't been terrible defensively. But yeah, it's a tough choice, to be honest. I just think that playing at Anfield it's always seemingly been quite a tough game, and I think the matchup Liverpool versus Crystal Palace has always been good. I recognize obviously that Crystal Palace have a new manager, but it's not like the team from Crystal Palace has fundamentally changed. There are still a lot of threats that Liverpool can provide, and I guess I'm also a little bit marred by the fact that last season Salah had some great games versus Crystal Palace. What do you see in Gallagher? Surely this is just a purple patch. Why do you think he'll keep going? So he takes set pieces for Crystal Palace. On top of that as well, I think if you look at the fixtures, right, Crystal Palace has had very, very tough fixtures, and he still posted some very good underlying stats in terms of expected goals and expected assists. And yeah, I mean, I saw him, for example, even the Brentford match, he was hitting the post. Last season, I think he was pretty much alongside Pereira, the only kind of saving grace behind that kind of West Brom shambolic team. So I think Gallagher is quite an interesting option. Ultimately, he's a young player who's establishing himself in the league, and I actually think he does pass the eye test for me, because he's a very direct player, but also someone who's very creative in terms of him possessing technical dribbling ability. Who do you need to get rid of first come game week 6? Ayling or Benrahma? I imagine Ayling is a bench piece for you, so I would probably say Benrahma. But if Ayling is a starter for you, I'd probably move away from him. A solid defense or clear money for Antonio? Let's see. I would probably say a solid defense is a bit better at this point in time, just due to the fact that West Ham will probably have to start kind of dealing with those European fixtures, and things will get tough over that. Could you take a look at my team? I'll send you over Twitter if you don't mind. Yeah, I could do. If you already have me on Twitter. I think, yeah, you have to make 2 free transfers to activate your wild card. Just have a look at the Twitter messages. I'd go for it, right? Because just because I think with Tsimikas and Ayling, those are inconsistent options. Tsimikas could play, but it's still rough. Reguilon is probably someone you want to move away from. Brownhill you can move away from. Tony you can move away from. Even Greenwood you can move away from, which you've done. So I like it. Rio says, hey, thoughts about Alan replacing Benrahma starting 11? I mean, it could work. I feel like Benrahma probably has slightly more potential to attack. So maybe I would still go for Benrahma. I mean, it's a loss of 1 point. I don't think that changes your season fundamentally, but I think there's a little bit more risk to reward with going for Benrahma still. So let's look at Yob's team. I like that team too, and that's very solid. Don't really see many clear weaknesses with it. I think it's going to have a very, very nice week. Elias has a team as well. I like the team. I just think Sar is a little bit of an outside punt, but that's fine if you want to keep Sar. Otherwise, I think, yeah, I mean, it's a very strong team. You've got pretty much a very strong core defense, very Wolves focused. But yeah, lovely team. I like this team right now. So this is 11K team. Once again, it's just I only don't really like Dennis, but I can understand going for Dennis to fit the 3-medium structure. Yeah, fair enough. And especially since they're playing Norwich, I suppose. Which is why I guess you have Williams at the back of your bench. That's fair enough, to be honest. And it's a very strong, very deep team. And that's what you can kind of see as well, like paying off with having someone like Gray or Gallagher. He definitely makes teams much more deep. I think my only answer to your question was that you should probably just play Alan. Actually, sorry, I did respond to that. No. And then should you play it safe and get Rudiger? I said that I think you can still fit Reese James in your team, I believe. Yeah, sorry. So, yeah, that's it. Let's just go back to YouTube for a sec. Oh, someone sent a super chat. Apologies that I missed that one. So Abhishek has sent a comment. Sanchez, Steele, Trent, Cancelo, Livramento, James, Jota, Salah, Sarah, Gray, MacArthur, St. Maximan, Bamford, Ronaldo, my wildcard teams. Any suggestions in playing 11? Yeah, I mean, I think this week you could probably go for Sar. I really like that front line, though, to be honest. I like that. Maybe you could bench Gray this week, potentially, because I think you can still play Trent, Cancelo, sorry, my bad. You can play Trent, Cancelo, and James. So that's your kind of 3 back line. And then you can play... Oh, actually, yeah, you could just play that whole team, right? So you can just play Trent, Cancelo, Liver, James, Jota, Salah, Sar, Gray, and then, yeah, Bamford, Ronaldo, and St. Max. Yeah, that's fine. I think that's a good team. Is MacArthur actually a 4.5 pick? He probably is, isn't he? Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Just wanted to make sure. But no, I think that's a strong team, Abhishek. I think I'd be happy to go with that team. Henry, thank you so much again for the super chat. Value for money, Christensen 5.0 versus Rudiger. I would say probably Rudiger. I think Rudiger is just more nailed, to be quite honest. I have Christensen in my team personally. But I think when it comes down to it, especially seeing the rotation last week, it seems like... See, the difference between last season, I think, is that we didn't get the chance to see Tuchel in the group stages. And we didn't know how he would prioritize players for the kind of group stage matches because Lampard was still the manager at the time. I think on that basis, I would probably still say Rudiger is more interesting, given the fact that he's been given the go-ahead in games where, you know, when a game where let's say Mount Christensen and Azpilicueta has been rotated and Rudiger is still on the pitch and then Rudiger still plays the next match, then I would say Rudiger has more value, to be honest, just based on that. Andrea says, hey man, thanks for the sick content. Wondering whether I should choose Jota over Grealish. I mean, I don't think you necessarily have to pick Jota over Grealish. I think Grealish is a very, very lovely option. I really do like him. And I think, honestly, in the future, when I move away from Jota, I actually think probably would be looking at Grealish. Dean, I don't really like Luca Dean as an option. I just feel like he's not attacking that much. So if you want an Everton defender, I'd rather you just go for a centre-back. Is Semedo worth the hype? I don't think he's as worth the hype as he seems to be around the community. I think, you know, as someone who has been watching La Liga for a long time and watching Semedo, I do think there are glaring issues with him as a player in terms of how consistent he's able to kind of convert these kind of goals and assist opportunities. You can't just look at underlying stats and say that a player who has never performed, you know, very high in terms of goals and assists can do well. Whereas, for example, when you look at Son, someone who's very low expected assists and expected goals, he's consistently outscored them. There's some players who always usually do meet their expected goals, expected assists, but, you know, I wouldn't say Semedo is worth one of them. I probably would still prefer Marcel at this point in time, because that cash can be spent elsewhere, right? Duffy or Dean to start? I'd probably go for Dean, to be honest. I think Leicester could still hit Brighton hard, and presumably you still have Sanchez as your keeper. I don't think Amartey will start. Ramsdale's sure starter. I don't think he is a sure starter at this moment in time. Would you start Veltman or Ayling? I'm leaning towards Veltman. Leeds missing a few defenders and Leicester not playing very fluidly. Yeah, I think you could go for Veltman, to be honest. I agree, like, Leeds just aren't a very good defense right now, and that's why I didn't want to start the season with them. I didn't really have confidence in them as a defense. Do I have news on Harrison? Not really, but I do think that the rumors that he has COVID, Jansen or Marcel, I probably would go for Marcel, just because I think Wolves have competed versus some bigger teams, and that's why they have less clean sheets, whereas Brentford have had slightly nicer opposition, and I think over time, I think Wolves will prove to be a slightly better defense. Tomiyasu, I think he makes sense, but I would still probably go for White for budget, or go for Tierney if you want attacking returns. Should I remove Benrahma for Gray and start Ben White, or remove Antonio for a Bamford and bench White? I would probably go for removing Benrahma, because I think Antonio, whenever he's fit, should start the Premier League and should play 90 minutes. There isn't really a replacement, in the team for West Ham. Whereas I think with Benrahma, what we've seen is that there is a replacement in terms of Vlasic. Bamford or Jimenez. I'm personally in the Bamford camp, but if you go for Jimenez or Jimenez, that's totally fine. Torres out for Rafinha. I wouldn't take Torres out of my team, to be honest. I just think it's not. I don't think it's worth the free transfer, especially since we have to kind of prepare ourselves for going to Chelsea very soon. Can we see our full team? Yes, absolutely. Sorry about that. Good shout, Roddy. You're 6 points ahead of the next person in my league, currently 6th. Do I go? Oh, you're 6 points ahead. Yep. Do you go -4 on Benrahma to Rafinha? I probably wouldn't, to be honest, because I'm not expecting Rafinha to have a gigantic haul. For me, like Rafinha over the course of his career, if you look at actually Rafinha's stats, let's have a look at Rafinha's stats together, right? Just in terms of how much he contributes. Let's look at last season, for example. If you look at last season, like most of the time, I think he does do well consistently over one game, right? It's not like he has explosive games. It's not like he has it's not very often that he has like a brace or a 1 goal 1 assist game. That's only happened twice, whereas he did haul on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 other fixtures, So for me, he's less of an explosive player, so I don't really see the need to get Rafinha in for a -4. That's personally just how I feel about that. Yeah. Let's see if there's any kind of Twitter notifications. So Brian's kind of posted his team. I think, yeah, the suggestion, so you're probably going to captain Salah and Ronaldo comes in. Fair enough. And then you're playing Dennis versus Norwich. Okay. I mean, I'd probably keep the team as it is, right? I think just in the future, probably look to maybe move away from Benrahma potentially, and that's pretty much it. In terms of Lucas's team, I think... Okay, I think that, I mean, I would just let you know, I'm sure you know it yourself, but the Jota captaincy, of course, is a huge punt. I hope it works out for you. Otherwise, I think, it's a bit of a tough situation that you're in. I guess the bench is a little bit weak, as we can see. I think maybe the idea is probably just to move away from Reguilon when we have the opportunity to. In the 3-man structure, obviously, I think your defense is slightly weaker than some of the other teams in the league, right? But when Antonio comes back, obviously you have a pretty, I guess, arguably strong 3-4-3. The only issue is that probably Amarte and Manquillo probably don't play too many games per season. They're not kind of nailed options, in my opinion, right now. So I think more of the money and the budgeting has to be kind of allocated towards there eventually as the season goes on. Let's have a look at Richmond's team. So I think I wouldn't wildcard to have 2 keepers, to be honest. I think you can still save money there. I think having a set and forget keeper is a lot nicer. I know you have a lot of money to spend in terms of the team. But the reason why I say that is just because you would rather have the money kind of in your bank, disposable and ready to be used, than you have, like, let's say a team like this, for example. Also, I would also maybe wait for the Antonio price fall, but it seems like actually you got him at 7.7, so it doesn't really matter. Forget about what I said there. Yeah, so I would probably try to save money in your team so that maybe if you want to upgrade or move out of a certain player, it's a little bit easier. I don't think rotating keepers is a very good option. It's something I did last season, but I actually personally regretted it, and I'm probably never going to do that again. Let's look at Sahil's team. But also, I'm just going to check the YouTube comments just to see if I've missed anything. Nothing so far. Fornals or Gray? I probably would still go with Gray, especially if you already have Antonio in your team. What do you think about St. Max? I do like St. Max, to be honest. I think I think the issue with St. Maximum is just that, he does kind of fix you into that 6.5 price bracket. But ultimately, I do think he is on a trajectory to have a good season, in my opinion. And with Wilson out, I think he becomes more talismanic. So I do like him as an asset. Archit mentions positive rumors around Rafinha. I'm just not that interested, to be honest, in Rafinha. I don't want to go double leads, and that's pretty much how it is. I like Rafinha as a player, but I think the fact that I've gone for Bamford due to the DCL issue is pretty much why I'm in that situation. Duffy or Marcel, I'd probably go for Marcel. Ailing, Cody, or White, I'd probably go for one of Cody or White. Given the fact that Arsenal are playing versus Burnley, I'd probably go for White, to be honest. Rudiger plus bench 4.4, Mendy or Christensen plus benched Gallagher. Yeah, I think... Ooh, that's a tough question. I'd probably go for the Christensen variation, though. That's a tough one. You never walk alone, Anka. Thank you so much, honestly. Yeah, I will have a great weekend. You too as well, though. Gray versus Doucouré thoughts. It's a tough one because honestly, Doucouré has played a much more offensive box-to-box role than I ever imagined. Last season, he was playing a little bit deep, almost like a DM. And this season, it's been quite different because, Everton play a flat 4-4-2 and he has that kind of license to push forwards. I still say Gray right now just because I think with DCL out, he benefits a little bit more as one of those players playing in the forward positions. Just going back to your question, Henry, I would probably still go for Christensen in that situation. Just because I think Gallagher's that interesting. But I mean, I know you probably don't seem to rate Gallagher as much as I do. So I think if you value, the nailedness of Rudiger, then go for him instead. Thank you, Henry. I do hope I save your FPL. Where would you go from Benrahma then? Who do you look to get in the coming weeks? I'd probably go for Conor Gallagher, Archit, as you know. Quite a big fan of him, personally. Ramsdale likely to start. Arteta says can't guarantee Leno game time. I mean, I think you can read Arteta's comments in two ways, right? One, it's like a manager suggesting that you're not promised start. So what he's suggesting is that no one is owed that position by default. So he's saying that I think his players have to earn that position. But if you take it as, Ramsdale's going to be playing for a long time, then fair enough, you can go for Ramsdale. Tsimikas has been leaked to be starting tomorrow. Andy has confirmed it from Let's Talk FPL. Fair enough. I mean, if that's the leak, then I think obviously if anyone has Tsimikas, then try to keep Tsimikas in your team. Yeah, I'm not sure who he got his source from, but that's fair enough. Torres captaincy, I think that's a little bit of an outrageous differential, to be honest. Cancelo captain, I'm a bit worried about the kind of centre back news with Stones being out and and Laporte being out, so I'd probably stray away from that. Alan or Benrahma. If you're just going to play a player this week, I'd probably say Benrahma still. I think both teams can lose their clean sheet, and the only one who really has offensive potential is Benrahma. Tierney or Dean or Sarr or Troy to lock in today. Can choose only one. I would probably pick Tierney, honestly, out of that list. Livramento or Marty for Game Week 5. I mean, I don't think Marty even plays right now for the team, so I don't think Marty plays for Leicester right now. I think Vestergaard plays first. What's the problem? Double up on Leeds attacker. I'm just not very confident in terms of the Leeds offense right now. I think they've been quite poor so far. Is Kovacic a trap? Yes, he's a trap for sure, in my opinion. Thoughts on Adama? I don't really rate him too much as a player. I think obviously he's a physical kind of specimen in terms of a player, and he's very hard to defend. But in terms of whether he actually converts a lot of his effective chances and his positions into FPL points, I don't think he's very good at doing that. Thoughts on Reese James? I love Reese James, to be honest. I would like to get Reese James in my team ideally sometime soon. Doucouré instead of Gray if you're using wildcard. If you want to, yeah. I would probably still go for Gray, to be honest. Jota plus Greenwood or Jota plus Torres or Greenwood plus Torres. Tough question, but I would probably say Jota plus Torres for now, I think. Greenwood or Torres? I have Greenwood in my team personally, but I think Torres seems to be the more interesting option medium term, especially since Rashford will come back in and things like that. Livramento or Brownhill? I would probably say it's a tough question. I would probably say Livramento just because he might have a small shot at doing well. Thoughts on Pep Roulette and Torres in 11 tomorrow? I mean, I don't love Pep Roulette, but you kind of have to live with it sometimes. I still think Torres is at a price where he might justify playing with Pep Roulette. And especially since Greenwood starts to be kind of a less interesting option, I think Torres is there basically as a good downgrade. Sar or Gray using wildcard. I'd probably go for Gray, to be honest, even though I like Sar a little bit more just for the 1 week punt. But if you're going for a wildcard, you're going for slightly longer kind of potential players, right? So I think Gray has the potential just because he plays for a better team and he can make more chances. So Jalen has the team over here. I presume this is okay. This is probably not what is this a wild card? It's not. Sorry, Marcel has been added to your squad. Okay, fair enough. So you have one more free transfer. Fair enough. I think this is a strong team. I guess this is the week where you want to have Dennis, but and then you have a very actually strong defense. It's just that you're missing Trent, which is why you've accumulated quite a strong midfield. I think you could probably roll a transfer in this team, to be honest, and then maybe think about, let's say, moving out of a player or two, because I think you can still go back into Trent, which I think is a glaring weakness of this team. Because I don't think Fernandes will hold that kind of 12 value very well. Whereas you could maybe actually improve, let's say, a Marte. Although that would actually move you into a back four. I guess the issue is the fact that you have Mendy in your team. So this is a very value-based team. I still think you move out of Fernandes, though, because I just think he's less of a talisman than Ronaldo. So you basically want to roll a free transfer and then make a decision on maybe moving away from Fernandes at that point in time. Otherwise, I think the team is pretty interesting. Like I don't think it's going to have a bad game week. The defense overall is very strong, bar the lack of Trent. But yeah, that's pretty much how I feel about that. Let's have a look at this team. So obviously, I think the issue with this team is having Ayling in the team. You don't really want him to be your third defender. And then Mahrez, of course, is kind of holding a lot of cash in the team. I guess what you're probably doing is holding for that Game Week 7 wildcard, which I completely understand. That's fair enough. In that case, then I think, yeah, you can probably live with the next 2 weeks, but it's tough, right? You will have at least Livramento back next week, who might be more interesting than Ayling, potentially. But yeah, I think you could probably hope Mahrez will get some points as a substitute, or if he gets, odd starts. But you can probably live to Game Week 7, at which point you can wildcard, so I think that's fine. Roddy's team here. Veltman, Ayling. Okay, weak bench this week. One free transfer. So I guess the issue is if we transfer Ben Rama this week, our bench isn't going to be any better. I think you probably want to roll a transfer, to be quite honest, so that you can actually maybe get out of Tony and Ben Rama at the same time and maybe make some budget adjustments to these two players. I presume once again you're holding your wild card like most other players have done. But I think the defense is, it's in a sense going to last because Antonio comes in. So you probably just want to hold that transfer and just maybe make some moves between Benrahma and Tony, or let's say another midfielder and Tony. Just because obviously Tony hasn't been holding so far. But I think you hold that free transfer so that you can make that kind of formation change. You don't want to just be changing one player at a time with that kind of team. Let's have a look at Maroon's team. Strong team, to be honest. So you're going with Gallagher this week. I'd probably go for Semedo over Gallagher for this week. I would put Gallagher on my bench. Other than that, I think it's a strong team. You might even want to play Dennis, as some people have. I personally don't think Dennis is that interesting, but yeah, that's how I feel. Let me just go back to the YouTube chat. James, so you've just woken up. Is there any pressing news? Fan club from Thailand, thank you so much as well for supporting everyone. If you could drop a like and a subscription, that would be really, really appreciated, especially if this is your first time from this channel. Simicast is apparently confirmed. Arch it. Who's confirmed it? Simicast really playing? So tough, though. I mean, Simicast becomes a 1 week punt if you have him in your team. But I imagine a lot of people have transferred out Simicast, right? In terms of the active playing population. You're playing your wild card. You have Alonso, double up Chelsea defense with James for long term, or get a Wolves defender. I think the risk with Alonso and James is both that they're, I guess, rotation prone. But I think if you have a strong enough bench, then yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to having Alonso and James. Gray and Ayling or Gallagher and Marcel, I kind of like... Ooh, that's a tough question. I kind of like Gallagher and Marcel, to be honest, just because I think Ayling is a much worse defensive option. Gilmore, Livramento game week 5. Probably Gilmore, because either he plays or he doesn't, right? And then it goes straight to Livramento, who could actually maybe go to 1 point. I think the pressing news is that we're still waiting for news on Rafinha. And then we also need to hear about news on Harrison, right? Saka or Gray? I'd probably still rate Gray over Saka. The website that I'm using for stats is a site called FBref. Who's my captain? It's going to be Salah this week. So if I just quickly show my captain, here it is. Hi, Fran. Going Gilmore so you. Yeah, but good luck, Ed. I mean, honestly, I guess it's not the worst thing in the world to have 2 points or 0 points, right? Like, and having that kind of become another 2 points from some other bench piece. Who to start between Sissoko and Williams and Norwich? I probably would go for Williams because I think that clean sheet could be a huge differential in terms of points, whereas Sissoko maybe gets only 3 points tops. White or Marcel? Here's my team. Maybe White for this week, just because they're playing Burnley. Thoughts on Hwang? I mean, ultimately, he's a super sub at this point in time, right? If maybe he started this week over Traore, then I would be interested. But I'm not going to look into Hwang at this point in time. Do you think Sufal to Semedo for a -4 is worth it? Maybe, yeah. I think it could be worth it because I do think the West Ham defense is it's a little lackluster. But ultimately, we have to also maybe you can actually hold off on it because Zuma will come into the team. The defense should improve a little bit, and I think maybe you just hold off on that -4. I'm also not that interested in Semedo personally. You're on a wild card. Should you go for St. Max or Jimenez? I think I'd probably go for St. Maximin, to be honest, just because it gives me a bit more budget flexibility. And I would like to spend more of that kind of flexibility in the midfield than, let's say, someone like Jimenez, who's a bit fixed at his price. Any last-minute suggestions for the goalkeeper? I mean, Ramsdale's interesting, but we've literally only seen him on one game, guys. So I think it's a tough one. You're on a wild card. Greenwood / Lukaku. I think the Ronaldo Rafinha one is slightly more interesting at this point in time, right? Because Greenwood could start to lose his position in the team as a consistent starter. And you can also argue the fact that he's not that talismanic when he's playing right mid. And then I think you can just move down from Ronaldo eventually, and then you'll have the money to spend elsewhere. Whereas Rafinha is probably pretty fixed as long as he has no injury issues. I think Christensen will play, yes. But can I say he's nailed for every match? No. If Harrison is out, do you think Dan James is worth looking into? As I mentioned a few times, I think I would only be looking into one Leeds player. I'm not that confident in their attack right now. So I don't think Dan James is that interesting an option. I also think he'll probably be a sub for the next game as well. Cash to Tierney, I think that makes sense. Felix, that makes sense. Jimmy or Greenwood on wildcard, I'd probably go for Jimenez, to be honest. Just because I think Greenwood, as I said, his position will probably be less nailed than Jimenez's long term. Why isn't Jimenez scoring? I think he's actually playing quite a creative role for the team. I also think he's missed 1 or 2 chances that I think he would have maybe made in 18-19. So it could be a confidence issue as well. But as we know with strikers, is once you have that confidence, it starts to build. Gallagher or Marcel in the starting 11. For this week, I'd definitely play Marcel. I'd play Gallagher the next week. De Bruyne or Lukaku. I think you go for Lukaku so you can kind of prepare for those Game Week 7 fixtures for Chelsea. I also don't think you should be making a decision between a midfield premium and a forward premium. I think the structures right now that make sense are the threemium structure where you have 2 forwards and a midfielder, but not vice versa. Finn says, don't know if you've answered yet, but I've done Antonio to Bamford already. What do you think about Decent, Benrahma to Jimenez and Jota for a -8? Would be benching Reguilon. I mean, a -8 is a very, very tough order, but I think the players are moving into makes sense. So I can't see Jota hauling, for example. So yeah, I think a -8, that's a tough one, but I think you could do it given the fact that you've already wasted your transfer on Antonio. But that also is a lesson for other people as well. Like, don't knee-jerk your transfer until the game week is over as well. Best 6 mil with midfielder for a 2-week punt. I mean, at this point in time, given the form he has and the fact that DCL is out, I think Gray is probably the best 2-week punt. Just because I think Gallagher has a weak fixture versus Liverpool. And there aren't many good comparisons. Sarr could be a good 1-week punt, though, I think. Pinnock or Duffy? Probably Duffy just because of price reasons. But yeah, I think... Yeah, I would probably go for Duffy. A tough one, Marcel or Semedo? I'd probably go for Marcel. Once again, I always prioritize, if you can always get a defender for cheap, and there isn't much difference in terms of what they bring in terms of attacking contribution, then I think you always pick the kind of cheaper defender. Pookie as a differential, I'm not that interested. I think Norwich are a very, very poor side. I mean, even if he scores versus Watford, I wouldn't be interested in Pookie, to be honest. Pinnock or Duffy. I've already answered Duffy, so please try to stop spamming the chat. Jamie Barnes, White plus Gallagher or Rudiger and Bissouma. I'd probably go Rudiger and Bissouma, to be honest. Especially since Bissouma seems to be a bench option. Hey from Malaysia, how are you doing? Torres start. Yeah, I think Torres will start, but I can't confirm that, obviously. Thoughts on Sarr for the next 3? I think their most interesting fixture is the one right now, and beyond that, it's not that interesting. I just think they're not building enough attacks as a team. That's basically the issue of Watford right now. If Rafinha doesn't start, then I'll have Livramento from the bench. Should I take a hit for Semedo for Livramento? I don't think so, right? Because taking a hit is almost the equivalent of what, let's say, Livramento could get. Like, Livramento would get 1 point. Semedo is not nailed for a clean sheet, so that's the issue. I'm starting Williams over Sissoko. I would probably go for Ronaldo captain over Bamford captain. I just have a little bit more faith in Ronaldo, especially if there are some injuries in the Leeds camp. I wouldn't really captain Cancelo because I feel like if they could maybe lose a clean sheet, especially if, let's say, Laporte and Stones are out, which has been confirmed. 6.0 defender. Probably Cancelo, to be honest, as a 6.0 defender. But Rudiger or Reese James make a lot of sense too. Jota or Ferran Torres or Rafinha. What about Duffy? I'd probably go for Ferran Torres. I would go for Jota and then Ferran Torres and then Rafinha in that order, personally. And Duffy, I mean, he makes sense pretty much as a bench piece. Vlasic, I mean, I wouldn't go for Vlasic because he's still at that phase, I think, in the team where he's still establishing himself as a player. So not that interested in looking at him now. I mean, I'll still watch him play for sure, but I don't think, I'd be, this week, he might be a starter because Antonio's out. But other than that, I think, you got to kind of wait and see whether he actually provides a little bit on the pitch before you kind of make that punt. Brownhill or Manquillo, I think probably you just go for Brownhill, to be honest. Bissouma, Duffy, or Reguilon. I would probably go for Duffy, to be honest. It's a tough choice, but I think I would go for Duffy and then Bissouma and then Reguilon in that order. Pookie, I don't think is a good differential. Start Benrahma or Dean. I'd probably go for Dean, to be honest. I think Benrahma's not going to have the loveliest of weeks. Trent to outscore Salah as a captain. I think it could happen, honestly. Differential, but 100%. It could literally be like game week 2 again, right? Where Liverpool, do well and they win comfortably, but Salah doesn't get the haul that we like. Diesel Antonio out. Any suggestions? I think, Bamford is the logical one. The next one is going to be Jimenez. I also think keeping Antonio makes a lot of sense, guys. Should you switch Antonio for Bamford or bring in Rafinha for Jota? I would probably do neither, to be honest. Maybe Antonio for Bamford if you absolutely have to move away from Antonio. But yeah, that's it, guys. Pepe and Marcel / Fornals and Rudiger. It's a tough one. I really like Rudiger there. Not so sure about Fornals, though. Maybe, I'd still probably prefer Rudiger just for the safety, I think, of Chelsea. But I wonder if you can actually fit in Reese James just so you can have a little bit more explosive point holes. Thank you, Junwei. TAA, Cancelo, Marcel. Who to get as for a bench? I think, Tomiyasu or Ben White makes sense as bench options. Start Williams and play with 4 defenders, or start Kovacic and play with 5 mids. I would probably start Williams, to be honest. I know it sounds a little bit crazy, but I think it could be worth it. The best player, 7.5 to 8 mil. I mean, Trent Alexander-Arnold is probably that player. You made the mistake of transferring Antonio out early. Should I be buying him back next week and taking the 0.3 loss? I mean, I think you can wait and see, right? Because there might be some other issues, arriving in your team, and you'll have to make that decision later. You don't have to start Benrahma, so should I save a transfer or move him out? I think you save a transfer. You want to sub Tierney? Should I bring in Cancelo or James? Why do you want to sub Tierney right now, though? I think Tierney could still get a clean sheet versus Burnley for sure. Prey Reguilon, Alan, or Williams. I think Williams is actually a sensible option. Do you think Lukaku is a good option to put in my wild card? Yeah, I mean, if you want to build a team and you don't have the money for Ronaldo in terms of, like, let's say, like, affording some of the midfielders you want, then yeah, it makes sense to go for Lukaku now. I would probably go still, like, I like Lukaku a little bit less right now. I still prefer Ronaldo for now, for the next 2 weeks. But yeah, I think Williams is an interesting kind of bench option that you can finally bring in this week because Watford are a pretty poor team. Would you use your wild card just to upgrade a non-playing bench? No, I wouldn't do that. I would use a wild card if you want to change something in terms of your starters, for sure. Great to Benrahma for -4. Will he cover these points? I don't think he'll cover those points. No. Not now for Journey. Oh, next game week. Yeah, I mean, I think you can probably bring in James for next game week. You just captain Bamford, fair enough. Is it okay? Let's do a very late captaincy poll, actually. And obviously, I know most people have either one of Ronaldo or Lukaku. Actually, I'll just put Ronaldo as an option, and then maybe I think Trent is a pretty big option. I do think Trent's actually a pretty decent captaincy shout. I haven't included some Man City players, but I wonder how you guys feel about that. Reguilon or Alan, I'm probably not a big fan of Reguilon this game week. I do think Chelsea will score. Maybe Semedo is quite interesting. Is Jesus going to play? I think so, but I can't confirm it, guys. Sorry about that. Most people seem to be going for Salah. A little bit of captaincy for Ronaldo as well. So that's also a good test for, you know, the effective ownership for this week as well. But I'm probably going to hop off in 5 minutes so that I can allow for you guys to make your transfers. Keep in mind, there's only 10 minutes left for this week, so do have a look at that. I'm also going to have a look at some Twitter comments as well. Irakli's team here. I mean, I think I like this team. I think the only thing I don't really like, to be honest, is just Traore. I'm not a huge fan of him, but I guess this is not a wildcard team, so eventually you can move away from these players, and that's fine. I think for this game week, it's great, and obviously you have the 3 premium structure, and you still somehow managed Salah and Alexander-Arnold, so fair enough, well played. Thoughts on this team? Reese James, nice. Gallagher, yeah, so I think yeah, I think I might have responded already. I think I just said play Semedo instead. Cool. All right, let's just go back to the chat. So yeah, I think Salah seems to be the kind of default captaincy for everyone, so that makes sense. Vardy captaincy. I think you're taking a big risk there, but it could work out. Having already taken -4 Bruno Jota and Tony to Lukaku, is it worth taking another -4 DCL to Jimenez or Bamford instead of playing? Yeah, I think that could be worth it. I think Bamford makes sense. Rest in peace, Bamford. That's yeah. That 1% shows you how big a differential it is. Whoever is lucky in Bamford. So good luck to that guy. Could Barnes be a good 6.8 midfielder? Honestly, I'm not a huge fan of Barnes. I know the fixtures are nice, but I think it's not that interesting. Why is no one talking about Watford fixture swing? Dennis can be a steal right now. I think it's just due to the fact that Watford haven't performed versus any team so far, other than the fact that they blitzed Aston Villa. Like, if you watch that game, I think you would actually put it down to Aston Villa having a bad game, having very, very exceptionally poor defense, and generally being unorganized, as opposed to Watford playing well. All 3 goals came from counterattacks, other than the Cucho goal, which was a very, very nice super goal. And ultimately, I haven't been impressed by Watford's attacks whatsoever. So even if they're facing some tougher teams, I think the only interesting asset is really the talisman, who is Sarr. And then maybe Dennis, who... Dennis as well isn't necessarily also playing striker each game. Keep in mind they're playing Joshua King as well. And then Dennis sometimes plays left wing. So it's a tricky thing there. Christensen or Benrahma? Probably Christensen, right? Because if he doesn't play, then Benrahma comes in. Should you go for a City or Chelsea defender? I think as we're approaching game week 7, I think the priority is still to get a Chelsea defender. And then we can think about City defenders a little bit later. I would go for Christensen. I'm on a wild card. Should I stick to Sanchez or opt for Ramsdale? I would stick to Sanchez for safety. Unfortunately, I think the only issue with the wild card this week is you don't have the security of thinking, you know, whether Ramsdale makes sense. I think you want to play it safe with the wild card. I've already responded, NK, so I'm just gonna have to time you out. I'm sorry. Try not to spam the chat. Oh no, I've timed you out. Let me try and stop that. All right, anyways, you got my response, anyways. But yeah, try I will try to respond as soon as possible. Just make sure everyone has the opportunity to get their chats in. Sissoko or Williams? Sissoko seems sensible. Yeah, exactly. I think it could be a low-scoring game, which is why I think there's a chance to go for Williams. In terms of the news of Rafinha, I think he is. I think Rafinha is likely to play. I don't think there's. I know there's a rumor, but I think no one's confirmed on that. How do you see the fixtures on your team, like the photo? I think there's a website that helps you look at that. Does anybody know exactly what website that is? Thanks, Even, too. Alan plus Dennis, 0.4 in the bank, or Gray plus Scarlet. I think Gray plus Scarlet in the bank is a little bit better. I just think Dennis isn't that good. Like I'd be more confident in Gray as a consistent kind of set and forget option than Dennis, to be honest. And even if you had to call one of them from the bench, I'd still prefer Gray. Marcel for a -4, it could work. It really depends on who you're dropping though. Double up on Chelsea defense. I think not right now, but in the future, yes. 7.2 mil Pepe or Torres. I think Pepe has a really good fixture swing, so if you don't want to play Pep Roulette, why not? Thiago or Gallagher? I'd probably say Gallagher. Is Gallagher going to score somehow? That just kills Trent as a cap. I don't think so. I mean, I'd be interested in Gallagher after this week, not this week. Walker or Cancelo? Probably Cancelo. Given the fact that he can play on both kind of wings, I feel like Ronaldo and Lukaku are going to do better than Salah. I mean, if you feel that way, then maybe you can just go for that, the 2 premium structure. It's a Chrome extension called Better FPL. Oh, thank you so much, Heracles. So yeah, that's good advice for someone. Marcel for -4. Once again, I need to know who you're subbing off. For the person who says that I have an echo, I think someone mentioned that earlier as well, but it seemed to be just an individual error. So maybe if you can refresh the stream, that might help. Thoughts on Mankilo? I have no interest in Mankilo. I think he scored a goal last week, but he's not a consistent goal threat whatsoever, in my opinion. And other than that, I think, yeah, I think they're just better 4.0 players, 4.1 players even. Risking Bamford captain over Ronaldo. Currently ranked 1,900. I mean, we could literally see you at the top of the world if that works out. So good luck with that. Why did I change Marcel over Cody? Because I'm stupid. Because I'm stupid. There you go. That's the answer. Basically, I was very worried that Marcel would get an injury. And as you can see, my bench is quite weak. So I was worried that if Marcel got injured, I don't have a good enough playing bench in terms of Livramento and Williams. Especially since the fixtures are tough for Livramento in this point in time. So I wanted to play it a bit safer because I think Cody is less injury prone. But otherwise, yes, the true answer is that I'm stupid. My audio has some echo. I'll try to fix that for the next live stream. What is the argument against keeping both Ronaldo and Lukaku after game week 7? I mean, there's no specific argument, but it's always when you have more premiums in your team, there's less balance in your team. So the argument that people are making is that Ronaldo's not going to have such substantial hauls or such good captaincy shouts where it makes sense to keep him on your team. And it's picking up stream delay. That's so weird. I'll try to make sure that's fixed. I'm not sure why I have stream delay. That shouldn't be happening right now because I'm not playing back my own audio, but I'll try to make sure that gets fixed. Is Sanchez to Sa a good move when you already have Semedo? Probably not. But I mean, you could go for it if you want to. I just think that spending money on a keeper transfer-wise isn't always worth it. Marcel of Cody, who should be? I still think Marcel should be in your team. You know, I was just trying to be a bit cute, and at the time I think I was quite sick, so I just had a knee-jerk kind of panic reaction late at night around 2 a.m. So I guess my advice to you guys is don't do knee-jerk transfers late at night. Would you start Jimenez or Saka this game week? I think Jimenez makes sense. Jota or Grealish? I think Jota for the immediate fixtures, but I think actually moving away from Jota into Grealish makes a lot of sense. So like if you look at my team now, like in the future, I can see myself definitely going for Jota, like for Grealish. I have the money to do so. Like, as you can see here. So yeah, I think that could be quite interesting. I'm sorry, guys. I'll make sure to fix the echo. But yeah, I don't know exactly what's going on with my audio. I think there's just some kind of issues that have cropped up lately. Anyways, I'm gonna hop off now because I think right now is the time for you guys to make any kind of late adjustments you guys want to do. Thank you guys so much for joining the live stream, and thank you guys as well in general for all the support so far. It's been really nice kind of being welcomed by the FPL community the last few game weeks, and I'll see you guys the next game week. I hope you guys have a lovely game week.